Hello, I'm so glad you're here. This is Jennifer. Well, I went a bit overboard once again, and I have loads of cards for you today. The technique that I'm focusing on is creating stamped window cards. This is something that you can do with any stamp and coordinating die, and it allows you to create something a little unexpected. You can do this for one-layer cards, or you can add dimension, and I'll show you how to do both. Now, all of my cards feature this same stamp set today. I kind of went head over heels for this set, so I thought I would demonstrate a bunch of cards using it. Just so I can show you the direction we're headed, this is the idea. You can see it's a one-layer card on the front, and when you open it up, there's an image on the inside that shows from both the outside and the inside. A fun stamped window design, and I have several variations for you today. So this is a new stamp set from Altenew. Actually, it's been out for a few weeks now. I'm just now wrapping up the video. It's the Mod Fruit Bowl. So it also comes with a guide that shows you the different ways you can layer the images to create different types of fruit. And there are coordinating dies available, which I'll be using for today's technique. So these fruit images can be used in many ways. I'm just showing you a few of them today. In addition to the sentiments in this stamp set, I did use two other stamp sets for sentiments, so I could shake things up a little bit as we went. This one I used the Hello and the My Sweet Friend and the You're the Sweetest. I thought the sweet sentiments went well with the fruit. I also use this Altenew stamp set. I really like the basic thank you sentiments in this one, and we'll be using this one later in this video. But really the focal point of this card is all about that fruit stamp set. All right, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to create with this stamp set. I just knew I wanted to make a bunch of colorful cards. So I started out by stamping and die cutting lots of fruit pieces. Then I kind of figured out what I wanted to do for a technique, and we'll move from there. So I thought I'd show you first how I did a bunch of stamping pretty quickly. I really do recommend a stamp positioner like a MISTI stamping tool. It's so helpful with stamping. In this case, I am cutting my cardstock to square pieces. That way I can stamp in one corner, rotate it, stamp it again, rotate it, and then do that 4 times so that I can have this image stamped many times in the same position in each corner. This works best with square cardstock. I used 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch white cardstock, but you can use whatever size you want. Now, I am doing a bunch of stamping, as I mentioned. I made a lot of fruit pieces, so I repeated this on several other white square cardstock pieces. Once I've done those, it's time for the next image to layer in this. Now, this isn't really a layering stamp set, but rather a building stamp set. You don't layer the images on top of each other, but rather position them to kind of build an image. So here we're building a watermelon. By the way, sorry for my bruise. This is from a while ago. I had a bad experience getting blood taken. So it's gone by now, but I filmed this quite a while ago. All right, so I have added this piece to the 2 watermelon slices, and I'm stamping it with lime ink. Now, my lime ink is a little splotchy because I need to re-ink it. I'll show you how to re-ink at the end of this video, but at this point, I was a little too lazy to do so, so I just continued with what I had. Then we have the next image for the watermelon, and those are the seeds. So I line up the 2, and I'll stamp this with black ink, then rotate it, stamp it again, rotate it. So look how quickly I was able to create all of these images. And remember, I did it on additional pieces of cardstock also. Really, using a stamp positioner creatively is a great way to save time if you're stamping a lot of images. All right, now this is a bigger piece of cardstock. This one is 5 1/2 by 5 1/2, so I could put more images on it. I'm sticking to that one little corner area, and these I will turn into lemons. So these are 3 images from that same stamp set, and I'm stamping it with a lighter yellow ink. After I've stamped this, I can rotate it, stamp it, rotate it, and keep doing that until all 4 corners have these images. See how quickly this comes together? Now, I've done many videos on different ways to stamp a lot of images. I'll link to a couple other videos up here on the top right if you're looking for other ways that may work better for you. All right, after I did the first layer, now it's time to add in the second layer here, and I'm stamping with a slightly darker ink. I am putting the Altenew inks that I used, the color names on the screen for you, but keep in mind you could do this with whatever inks you may have. All right, now we can add even more images to these, again stamping with a slightly darker yellow. And the nice thing about this is I can repeat this process with greens to make limes. I think you can see why I really like this stamp set. There's many ways you can use them. All right, now I have a different shaped piece of cardstock, a rectangle. If you're going to use a rectangle, I do recommend only stamping on one side, then rotating it 180 degrees, and then stamp on the other side. So if you have cardstock cut to a rectangle, you can definitely do this method. You're just going to stamp on one side, rotate, and stamp on the other. This time I'm creating a few different orange images. I used a lighter orange for those centerpieces, and then I switched to a darker orange for the building images, for the peels of it. It was easy to figure out how these images work together because I followed the guide. Remember, I showed that comes with the stamp set. In fact, there's little seeds you could add to the oranges or lemons or limes and white heat embossos. I decided to skip that for today's video, but know that a lot of things are included in the set so you can do different types of fruit and get different results. After stamping a bunch of different fruit, I used the coordinating dies to cut them out, and I have lots of pieces ready to go. Now, I knew I wanted to do several different layouts and card designs. Let's start with this one here, and again, let me show you the direction we're headed. The idea is that the large lemon with the sentiments on the inside of the card, but you can also see it on the outside thanks to the die cut window. This is a pretty basic, simple design, and then we'll step it up to other designs later in this video. Let's get started with this one. When you're creating a card like this, I think it's best to create a plan. This is my template. I use some of my die cuts and I just temporarily tape them onto a note card. This is the design that I'm going for. I just rearranged all the little die cuts until I was happy with the placement. I will go back to this template over and over again as we create this card. So I've got it in the corner of my stamping tool, and I'm starting with that large lemon image first, lining up the stamp with the stamped die cut on my template. Now I'm putting into this a white note card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. It's the same size as my template. I will now stamp that same lemon right onto the front of the card. I'm using the same colors I showed you earlier. Then I will open the card and stamp the same thing again. So the stamped image is in the same spot on the front of the card and the inside of the card. This is the key to doing the stamped window design. Now I'm going to do the same thing on several note cards. I'm here, I have everything together, I have lots of die cuts made, I might as well make multiple cards, but you could definitely do this technique, making one card at a time. All right, so I stamped on the outside, and again, I'll stamp it on the inside. After doing this on several note cards, it's time to go back to our template to line up the next stamped image, which will be the insides of that large lemon. So I'll just line my stamp up with the stamping I've done on my template, and now we can stamp this onto all of my cards. Again, I'll stamp this on the front of the card and on the inside. The reason I'm doing that on both is we're going to create a window on the front of the card, and we want the lemon to be showing on the inside of the card. By stamping on the front, we'll know where to die cut. So I'll do this on all of my note cards, then I'll move on to the other half of that lemon also and stamp that on all of them. Altenew did a really good job making this an affordable stamp set. It's a 4x6 stamp set, but you can use it in so many different ways that you can build larger images, as I'm doing here, or turn them into lots of different types of fruit. Okay, so after I've done this on the front and the inside of all the cards, it's time to move on to the next image. So I'm going back to the template and lining some stamps up with the stamped die cuts we have on the template. To save time, I'm lining up several images that will be stamped in the same color. So here I'm lining up images that will be stamped in that lighter green color. That way I can stamp them all at once, which will save me a lot of time. This time, however, I'm only stamping on the front of the card. I'm not stamping these on the inside of the card. The lemon is the only image that will be showing on the inside because we're going to do a die cut window for the lemon, but not for these other fruit. So this will be quick because I only need to stamp them on the front. All right, so now we can go back to our template and line up our next images. So let's do the oranges next. So I've put the orange rind on here, and now I can stamp this on each of them. So I'm going to continue to do this where I line up my stamp images with my template and then go ahead and stamp them on the front of all of my cards, building this little fruit scene. And remember, whenever you can, try to put multiple stamps into your stamp positioner that you will stamp with the same color ink. Here I've got a bunch in there that I'm stamping all in the darker green ink. This will save you some time. Okay, so after doing all the stamping, just following my template as a guide, here we have our 1-layer card. Now it's time to cut the window. I'm putting the coordinating die around that large lemon, opening up the card, and running it through my die cut machine. This will create a window on the front that will line up with our lemon on the inside. And that die cut lemon we can save for another project. So here we have a 1-layer card that's made a little more interesting because you have that window that allows the image on the inside to be seen. So I'll do the coordinating die cut of the lemon on all of my cards. Now we can stamp a sentiment right on top of that lemon, so it'll be seen on the inside of the card and on the front. And on some of my little fruit, I decided to stamp the smiley faces that are included in the set. This makes it a little more playful. You could leave this card as is and you have a great 1-layer card. You don't need all those fruit that I stamped and die cut earlier in this video. But I like to add dimension to my card, so I wanted to show you how you can do so if you want to. Look closely at the oranges here. Those are popped up with dimension behind them, making the card a little more interesting. So what I did is off screen, I die cut these orange shapes from white cardstock, and I'm gluing them behind my stamped orange die cuts. Then I'll glue them onto our card right on top of the oranges we stamped. So now these oranges stand up with dimension on the front of the card. So our lemon is set back inside of the card because we have that die cut window. Our green limes are stamped directly on the front of the card, and the oranges are popped up because we glued them on with a couple added die cuts behind them. So you got a lot of different dimensions here, making it very interesting. So I did do that dimension to some of these cards, some I left as 1 layer. I'll show you comparison. All right, so here we have 2 different cards that are the same design, but on the ones on the right, I stamped the smiley face. On the left, I skipped the smiley face. I did add some confetti in the background for some sparkle. Now this is a 1-layer card here. You can see the image on the inside. It shows from the outside. Didn't add any dimension to this except for those little confettis. This is nice and thin and will mail very nicely. However, if you want that added dimension, here I have the dimension behind the oranges on the card on the right. Totally up to you and what you like best. I stuck to the citrus for these cards so I could use that You're the Zest, but you could mix in the other fruit with this design if you want. All right, now let's do another card design, just another example of this. This time I have my sentiment up on the top, and then we have a die cut window there on the right. I used some of the watermelons that we stamped and die cut at the beginning of this video and created a template once again. This is on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. I temporarily glued all those watermelons in place so that I could use it as a template like we did before. I'm lining up 2 of the watermelon stamps with the stamped images on my template. Sorry, my head gets in the way. It's the best way to line them up. Then I'll close the door on my MISTI to grab those watermelon and take the template out and replace it with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding note card. I'll stamp this on several note cards because again, I might as well make lots of them while I have my supplies out. So I'll continue to do this until all of my watermelon are stamped. I just go back to that template as a guide on where to position each of my stamps, and then I'll stamp them onto my note cards. Now this watermelon is the one that will be the window. So I'm stamping this one on the front and the inside. Only this watermelon. This will be the only one that will have the die cut window. Okay, I continued to stamp all the red watermelon, and then I also added the green to all the watermelon, with that only single watermelon stamped on the inside also. Now around that watermelon, we can add the coordinating die to cut our window on the front of the card. So now we have the window that allows that watermelon on the inside to show through. Next, we can stamp our sentiment in that little opening up there on the top left, and also stamp the seeds on each of the watermelon. I like to save my black stamping till last because I like to use Altenew Obsidian Black ink, which is a pigment ink, and it stays wet for a little bit, and I don't want to smear it. The advantage of this ink is it's very dark and it's very crisp, and if you want to, you can heat emboss with it by sprinkling on some clear embossing powder and heat setting it. If you're just going to stamp it without heat embossing it, I do recommend giving it time to dry so you don't mess it up, or heat setting it. Okay, so now you could leave this as a one-layer card, but I want that added dimension. So on top of some of my watermelons, I'm gluing additional watermelons, the ones we made at the beginning of this video. They have 2 additional die cuts glued behind them, so you have some stacked dimension. So now we have the watermelon that's set back in the window, some that are stamped on the front of the card, and some that are glued up with dimension. This one here is a one-layer card, except for I did add those little confetti for some sparkle. I stamped different sentiments in that opening using the sets I showed you at the beginning. Now this one has some popped up watermelon just to add that dimension. Totally up to you if you do that. It does save time if you don't, because you don't have to create those additional stamped die cuts. Totally up to you. I love that dimension. So here you can see how I have lots of cards ready to go. And I did stamp "You Are the Sweetest" on the inside also. Since I had the template made, I did some additional cards where I mixed the fruit on it, so you can use the same template for other fruit also. Okay, let's do another design. This one I really wanted to create. I kind of had a vision in my mind of covering the entire front of the card with fruit and then having 3 die cut windows showing to the inside. So there are 3 little fruit stamped on the inside too. So here's my template. Again, this is a note card size, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I just temporarily glued all these watermelon die cuts on here to use as a template. Later, I can take them off and glue them down permanently or add them to another card. This is really helpful to me to create a template so I know where I'm going as I'm doing my stamping, and I can get the spacing just right. Let's start by stamping our first watermelon that I intend to put a die cut window around. So we'll have to stamp it on the front of the card and the inside. And that's this watermelon over here on the right. So I'm lining up the watermelon image, and I'll stamp this on the front and the inside of several cards. Again, you can make one at a time if you prefer. Well, I like this card design so much that I decided to make some that are all watermelon and some that have a mix of fruit. So this time I'm using the template to line up with that same watermelon on the side, but I'm using the orange slice image instead. All of these images are sized the same, so you can switch out the fruit however you want, which is another great thing I liked about this set. So now on some of these cards, I'll stamp the orange on the front and the inside, and that will be our die cut window. Really, I'm just changing up the fruit, but the location's the same on each of them. So I continued to stamp on all my cards, finishing off that fruit on the side, which I stamped on the front and the inside. And now we're moving on to the second window I plan to have on the card, which is on this bottom fruit here. So I'm stamping this one on the front and the inside, and I'll do that to all of my cards. After doing this, I did stamp a third fruit on the left-hand side, again on the front and the inside. So look at all of these cards that we have so far. These are all of the images that I plan to die cut out and make into windows. So instead of continuing with the rest of the stamping, I'm going to go ahead and die cut these windows right now, just so I can be sure that the placement's right as I add everything around it. So I tape the coordinating die over the fruit, run it through my die cut machine, and that will create the window there. And I'll do it for the other 2 fruit on each too. And I can be sure that the fruit on the inside lines up with these windows because of the technique that we used. Believe it or not, this method doesn't take that long, especially if you start with a template to help you out. All right, so there you can see how you have the 3 windows on the front showing those fruit on the inside. And I'll do the same with all of the note cards that I've stamped so far. And here we have the hardest part of the card done. All right, now we can stamp all the other fruit around it. This time I'm going to do things a little bit different. Going back to my template, those 3 fruit that you see there, I want to stamp directly onto the card. So I'm lining up my stamp image with the stamping on the template. Then we'll close the door on the stamping tool to grab those stamps, and then we can put our cards in and stamp away. I'll continue to do this until these images are completed. And now we have some stamped images on the inside, stamped images on the front, and the rest of them I'm going to glue on top for dimension. So I have all those fruit that we cut at the beginning that I stamped a bunch and die cut out. So those I'm going to glue onto the front of the card. This is kind of easier than trying to get the placement of the stamps just right. It's easier to get the stamped die cut wiggled into place than it is to stamp each one, and make sure you get the spacing how you want it. The template does really help though. So now I'm gluing these die cuts on top. I like to put 2 additional die cuts behind it so it has dimension, but you could glue it directly on or use a foam square if you prefer. I am looking to that template to get the spacing kind of right and figure out where I want things to go. Again, I'm sorry about that bruise on my arm. It's pretty nasty looking. Thankfully, it's long gone now. After gluing all the fruit in place, just following the template, we can add our stamp sentiment to that little gap that I left in the bottom right. I used a few different stamp sets for the sentiments just so they could all be a little bit different. I'm also stamping the seeds onto the images. This card happens to be my favorite because I used the kiwi in it and a mix of fruit. That kiwi image and the kiwi and the watermelon, just they won me over. Those are my 2 favorites. And it's fun to mix all these different colors together. I really like to add shine to my cards, so on all of my cards I added some flat, shiny confetti from Trinity stamps. It's just an iridescent circle in different sizes that's fun to scatter on your card because it captures the light nicely and also kind of picks up the colors that you have on your card. So you can see I used that one design, this last design, for lots of different styles. The one on the left has lots of citrus fruits. This one on the right has a good mix of things. So you can change up those fruit easily because of the way the stamp set is designed. But keep in mind, this is something that you can do with a variety of stamps and coordinating dies. In fact, I've done a similar technique on a video before where I used little critters to create a scene. And I'll link to that video up here on the top right if you want some more ideas. So here, let's go through these cards now. On all of these, I have the 3 fruit that are showing on the inside and showing on the outside. Most of my cards I didn't keep one layer because I like the dimension, but you definitely could do so if you prefer. Doing a technique like this, where you have the window on the front and the stamped image on the inside, is just a fun way to use your stamps and coordinating dies a little more creatively. I like doing things like this because it makes my card extra special and it makes creating more enjoyable. I still have lots of fruit that I stamped and die cut at the beginning of this video, so let's use those on a card, and I have some tricks for you. Again, it'll have a die cut stamped window. So I've stamped a sentiment kind of at an angle at the bottom of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. I'm putting a piece of temporary tape over it. This will be a guide to make sure I get my fruit straight to create a border. Now I'm putting this into my stamping tool and I'm stamping that one fruit that will create the window. So I'm doing that little watermelon shape here, lining up the edge of that stamp with that piece of tape. Again, that tape's just there as a guide. You could do pencil lines if you prefer. This is faster and easier. Since this is the image that will be die cut to create the window, I'm stamping it on the front of the card and the inside and on multiple cards. Then we'll continue to stamp the other image that lines up with this one. I removed the tape from this, but you really don't have to. Leave it on if you're doing this card too. I shouldn't have taken it off because I'm going to put it back on. But here I'm lining up the coordinating die with that watermelon and cutting from the front. So now you can see the watermelon on the inside. So now I'm putting that tape back on all of these. You can reuse that tape later on, so don't feel bad using a long piece like this. Now I have all of those die cut fruit from before. I'm putting additional die cuts behind them for some dimension, and I'm gluing them onto my card above and below that blue tape. Notice that I'm using the blue tape as a straight edge to make sure my fruit are straight. And so I'm just kind of creating this blank border around my sentiment with the fruit above and below it. This is something that didn't take long to create a bunch of cards because I had all of those fruit stamped and die cut from the beginning of the video. Once everything's dry, you can remove that blue tape and use it for something else, and then trim off the fruit die cuts that are hanging off the edge. So let's look at all the cards that I made with this design. These again came together quickly because I had my stamping and die cutting done for most of it. I did stamp thank you on the inside right above the watermelon. So the outside has a sentiment and so does the inside. And you can see on the inside there's plenty of room for your personal greeting to be written. I did also add those little sequins on the background for a bit of sparkle. And check out this large stack of cards I was able to create really from one stamp set. That's what happens when you fall in love with a stamp set and you can really get a lot of use out of it. All right, earlier I did say that I'd show you how I re-ink my ink pads. It's not really hard. All you do is put little drops into different areas on the ink pad. You can see it absorbs pretty quickly. I usually do 10 to 15 drops with these particular ink pads and re-inkers. This is what I really like to do. On the back of the ink pad, I write when I re-inked it, the month that I re-inked it. That way I know I have a re-inker in case I'm not certain, and I know how long it's been since I've re-inked it. Then when you stamp with it, you'll get beautiful results. I'll be honest, I don't re-ink my ink pads often. This happens to be one of my favorite colors, so it needed re-inking, but usually ink pads will last you a long time without needing it. All right, there you have a fun way to use your stamps and dies to create stamped die cut windows. I hope you try this. It's easy and a great way to get more from your products. I'll link below to what I used today, including that adorable fruit stamp set. At the end here, I have a couple other videos you may like. I thank you for spending all this time with me. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.